Today we are going to look at this topic called No One is Too Young or Too Old to be used by God, and you are always the perfect age where God is concerned. So we start off with Abraham and Sarah. Abraham and Sarah, that the patriarch, the couple that's supposed to be at the age they were supposed to have been grandfathers or grandmothers, they were still without a child, right? But then God had his plan for them, right? At age 75, at that time Abram. Abraham was asked to leave the Ur of the Chaldees and go to Canaan. And then God promised that Abraham would be the father of the nation, right? And through his descendant, right, would come a nation. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. And for them, it was like a joke, right? Especially for Sarah. It was like a joke. She laughed. But then we all know that nothing is impossible with God. Nothing. There's nothing too difficult with God. And God gave them a son in his own time. That Isaac, they could never imagine that at that age when they were supposed to be not even grandfathers, great grandfathers, they should have been at this age. They had their first baby, of course, the first baby, bouncing, bubbling, burping baby in their hands to play with and to even bring him up as Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the ancestors of the Israelites. So, age, God does not look at age, he looks at his own plan and he chooses whom he wants to use. And God blessed Abraham with this child, and the nation of Israel came out from that. There is no record of anybody in this world having a child at this age. Never. I have read some accounts of someone getting a child at a lady at around 50 something, 50 plus. That's all. There are some records, very few, but nobody to beat their record, because God was the one behind them, and God was the one who did not look at how old they were, but God saw that he could use them. And Abraham and Sarah were used by God to be the parents of a nation, right? Here, Exodus 3:10. It says, "Come now, therefore, and I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt." Now, who's talking to whom? Moses being spoken to by God. God speaking to Moses to take out the children of Israel out of Egypt. A huge task, right? And at that time, how old was Moses? Moses was 80 years old, and his brother Aaron, 83, when they spoke to Pharaoh about letting the people go. So, not a young man. Moses was 80. Brother also quite old, but that's God once again did not see what age they were. God knew God knew he could make use of Moses to deliver the people. And God used him. And he was successful, of course, all because of God's hand in all of that Egypt story and episode that we know about. Now let's look at someone who is very young. This is that young boy Samuel at the temple, right? God used him. He was at that time, if age is not mentioned, he was at that time around maybe 12 or 13, all right? Very young. when God called him and spoke to him and told him important things about Eli's family, about his two wicked sons. And of course, God used him not only at that age, all the way when he became a prophet up to his death. God used him at every age, from that young age. God called him and he said, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." This, of course, is one of those most exciting stories of the Bible, right? David was also very young when God used him, right? God used him in many ways, but one of them, the first one, is to topple that giant, is to defeat that giant, right? Of course, it was all God's hand upon him, but God used him and he was willing to go. He was ready. He had that faith, he had that confidence in God that the giant will be brought down. And he went. And because of that, all the fear of the Israelites were terrified. They were scared, right? But all that calmed down. The giant is dead, and they won a great victory. Young boy, David. But David was used by God once again to his old age, right? For his purpose, for his plan. Not David's plan, not David's purpose, right? And I just now talked about someone very old, then someone very young. Then let's look at someone who is not so old, not so young. Joseph at this time, when he became like the prime minister of Egypt, the ruler of Egypt, he was 30 years old. A young man, what you call a young man, 30 years old. And he was used by God in his plan and purpose to save the people from the famine. People of Egypt, people around Egypt, and especially his own family from the famine. And of course, Joseph did many great things in his time, and God used him at this, what you call prime of youth, 30, usually the prime of youth, neither old nor young, just fine. And but did God see the age? No. But the age is recorded here that God used him at this age and he was willing to be used by God. Now just let's look at someone. Anybody recognize this lady? This lady is called Corrie ten Boom. Corrie ten Boom was a Dutch, right? You might have read her story in a book called The Hiding Place or the movie called Hiding Place, where she and her family used to hide the Jews during the Nazi World War II. Hide the Jews. And because of that, they were captured, they were arrested. She was arrested, her family was arrested, her sister died in the concentration camp, but she survived and she lived up to a ripe old age where she continued to serve God in writing books, in teaching about forgiveness, and continue to help people even in her old age. That's Corrie ten Boom. Now let's look at Katie Davis Majors from Tennessee, US. She was only 18 when God called her to be a missionary in Uganda. Of all the places, Uganda, but she obeyed, she listened, and she was willing to go. And there she adopted 14 kids and started a charity. She did all of this before 30. Was she too young? Well, she was available to do what God wanted her to do. That was Katie Davis. When God called Jeremiah to be a prophet to the nations, he was a young man. And what did Jeremiah say? Alas, sovereign Lord, I said, I do not know how to speak. I am too young. But the Lord said to Jeremiah, do not say I am too young. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid, for I am with you and will rescue you. So here is Jeremiah, the young man, saying, I'm too young and I cannot speak, and all these excuses. But God said, don't say that you are too young. I'm going to be with you. You just go and speak and say whatever I command you. And then there were some, like Jonah, who heard God's command but ran away from God and he went to Tarshish. And we know the story of Jonah and the whale. But God did not give up on him, He gave him a second chance, right? Some people just run away, but God don't allow that to happen. And here is a most comforting and encouraging word of God for those who think they are old. It says in Psalm 92, verses 12 to 14, the righteous shall flourish like a palm tree. He shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon. Those who are planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish in the courts of our God. They shall still bear fruit in old age. They shall be fresh and flourishing. That's the good news. Even in their old age, they shall bear fruit, but they need to be planted in the house of the Lord. And how did Isaiah the prophet respond to God's call? When God said, who will go? Then Isaiah heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send and who will go for us? And Isaiah said, here am I, send me. I hope each one of us can say the same thing. Here am I, send me. I am ready. I am willing to be used by you. I am in your hands, Lord, no matter what age. And so, no matter what age we are, we can be used by God if we are available and willing and obedient and trusting in the Lord. No age, no biological age, no passport age. He just looks at our willingness to be used by Him. May God use each one of us.